What's up, everybody, and congratulations on your decision to serve in the United States Army. And now you want to know what to expect at Army Basic Training in 2021 amid the coronavirus pandemic. And I'm here to tell you, look no further than this here channel. Seriously though, I post a ton of basic training tips, recruiting, and other Army-related videos. I don't know what you're smiling at. Put your teeth on safe. No, but seriously, I am just one resource at your fingertips that you can explore and check out to prepare yourself for Army Basic Training. So whether you join the Active Army, Army Reserve, or the Army National Guard, we all get the same training at the same locations. There are 4 locations, in fact, in the United States that you could possibly do your basic training. That is Fort Benning, Georgia, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Basic training in and of itself are 10 very long weeks. You will be mentally and physically tired, despite what the comments say and what people say that went through Army basic training pre-COVID. Basic training is not any easier throughout the pandemic, okay? Basic training, in my opinion, is far more mentally challenging than ever before. Physically, about the same. Mentally, way more stressed, and our trainees are getting screwed out of Family Day and graduation day, which I will explain in this video. So stay tuned. So your first stop before you actually begin your basic training experience is the reception battalion, which is essentially in processing. Your reception process will be held and conducted at the reception battalion. However, COVID has a way of making things cause delays, and as a result, if that happens, instead of being in process at the reception battalion, you may actually ship out directly to your basic training unit to conduct the reception process there. The first thing that you will do going through the reception process, or once you get there, right, is to conduct and knock out your COVID test. Now, if you test negative, good to go, drive on, and you will continue your reception process. However, if you test positive, or in close proximity of somebody else who tests positive, now you go into isolation or quarantine for up to 2 weeks. I'll post a link down below for you to check out isolation and quarantine and all those nitty-gritty details when you're done watching this video. So once cleared, now you're gonna begin your process, and you're gonna go through a series of stations throughout the next 3 to 5 business days before you move on to your Army basic training. The first thing you'll receive is your amnesty brief and a shakedown of your personal belongings in which you shipped with. Your amnesty brief is essentially telling you what's a contraband and what you need to get rid of, and this is your moment where you need to get rid of it, because if they find it later on, you could possibly face UCMJ punishment. The next station you will go through is your pay station, making sure that your direct deposit information is correct. Set that up so that you get paid on the 1st and the 15th. So when you're active duty, you get paid on the 1st and the 15th of every month. And if you are eligible for BAH, or basic allowance for housing, make sure that gets implemented at that time and that you are good to go. You will go through the CIF, or the Centralized Issuing Facility, which you will receive the rest of your uniforms and anything else that you will need for basic training. You will also conduct an additional medical exam outside of what MEPS does. This is an additional medical exam, a more in-depth, thorough additional testing for vision and dental. You will receive briefings from your chaplain and other leadership and departments throughout your chain of command at Army basic training. You will receive all your necessary vaccinations while you're there, to include COVID, if and when it becomes available. They're talking about it being available for soldiers on a volunteer basis only while it's under the emergency use. Probably late March, early April is what they're projecting at this time. Again, it is on a volunteer basis if you want the COVID vaccine when it becomes available. But if in the future, if they make it mandatory, you got no choice. At some point, you'll go to the troop exchange to purchase personal hygiene products, underwear, socks, towels, so on and so forth, to include locks for your wall locker and such. Purchase enough personal hygiene products and laundry detergent to last you all throughout your first phase of Army basic training, which is 2 weeks. Males, get your haircut before leaving. It doesn't have to be a baldy, but if you can afford it, get your haircut. If you look like someone that belongs to the Metallica band with super long hair, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, get a haircut, because you will get unnecessary attention from your drill. Most basic training sites have reinstated haircuts, but just in case they aren't, due to COVID restrictions and whatnot, just get yourself a haircut before leaving. Be within Army standards, so have that discussion with your recruiter to know what the standard is before leaving. Your last day of your 3 to 5 days of in-processing at the reception battalion is for your final processing. So if you had missing documents, make sure you have it at that time. If there's any station that you have not completed in that time, make sure it gets done by this day, or you will be stuck at reception for the following week. Basic training is broken down into several different phases. Once you clear the reception battalion, you will be picked up by your drill sergeants and transported, if not marched, to your basic training unit of assignment. Pickup days are generally Fridays and Mondays. Due to COVID, there are no shark attacks being conducted at this time until the COVID restrictions are lifted. Now, with some new information that I recently received, the shark attacks may be an event that will no longer happen. The reason being is that the 11 Bravo Infantry School has created and implemented a new protocol called the First 100 Yards. And essentially it's broken down into 3 events with various activities that will be conducted that will instill and foster teamwork and discipline. This is going to be a similar program that other basic training sites are pretty much already starting or beginning to implement themselves. So the shark attack may be a thing of the past. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. I will be doing a very detailed video about the first 100 yards and my thoughts and insights about the future of the United States Army basic training when it comes to the shark attack and the first 100 yards. So pre-COVID, there were 3 traditional phases of Army basic training: red, white, and blue. So in the very beginning of COVID, we would ship out soldiers and they would go through a quarantine, self-quarantine period of a minimum of 2 weeks. Some soldiers have actually expressed of being in the quarantine or isolation for up to like 8 to 12 weeks, which was horrendous. Due to being self-quarantined for those 2 weeks, it would delay soldiers to in-process at the reception battalion, and this in itself caused a bunch of issues, with finance being the biggest issue of them all. And for those soldiers that were stuck in quarantine for up to, like I said, 8 to 12 weeks, this also caused a significant increase in discharge requests, because soldiers that were stuck in quarantine beyond those 2 weeks, especially those who were upwards to like 8 to 12 weeks, no longer wanted to deal with the COVID restrictions and the COVID issues and wait to actually start and begin their basic training experience. Basic training is already stressful and long enough, and adding those 2+ weeks for self-quarantining before you even begin the entire process, it's just not a good idea. The United States Army identified, reevaluated, and realized that this was a huge issue with pay issues, delaying training, and paying soldiers to do nothing for 2+ weeks. So with that being said, the United States Army, through its trials and tribulations and essentially getting caught with its pants down and reacting versus being proactive, had to assess what was going on, what was not working, and what would be the best strategy to combat this virus. So through that early experience, the United States Army decided to implement a controlled monitoring, which is commonly referred to as yellow phase or C1, C2, depending on the basic training site that you go to. So without going into grave detail about the yellow phase or the controlled monitoring, it's essentially a self-quarantining process where we restrict the soldiers to the barracks and the immediate company area, and that's it. In doing so, this allows the trainee to begin their basic training process and cut off that additional unnecessary non-training time of self-quarantining before beginning the entire process. So now this allows and affords the opportunity for the trainees to start their training, and that clock for 10 weeks starts at that time while they're self-quarantining. Yellow phase, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. It is extremely boring, but necessary, and it works. And in my opinion, it is the most mentally challenging portion of your basic training experience. Overall, throughout your yellow phase, you will be exercising physical distancing, wearing your masks at all time except for certain physical fitness training activities, and you will always be sanitizing your hand and your facilities that you currently live and work with. Essentially, during these 2 weeks of yellow phase, you will be conducting all of your classroom blocks of instruction. You'll learn about DNC or drill and ceremony, your PT, and all that good stuff, to include an introduction to BRM or basic rifle marksmanship, with minimal to no equipment. That's why that will all get jammed in to that first 2 weeks. You will be taught PRT, physical readiness training, and every single exercise, one by one, by the numbers. Your drill sergeant will break down each exercise by step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and tell you the do's and don'ts They will demonstrate it. You will then execute a few repetitions of your own while they walk around and make on-the-spot corrections. You will then learn in grave detail your DNC or your drill and ceremony, starting with the position of attention, the positions about the halt, the hand salute, and moving upwards to marching and everything in between. You will conduct PT or physical training 5 to 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturdays. With COVID, most units now are doing PT Monday through Saturday. You will conduct strength and mobility on one day and endurance and mobility on the opposite day. The Army Combat Fitness Test is your official PT test at this time, but it is not being held for record until further notice. So for trainees, it is not for record until the end of this FY of 2021, which is basically October 1st of 2021. But for the rest of the Army, will not go in for record until 31 March of 2022. In the meantime, the gold standard is your minimum standard for passing the ACFT, regardless of your MOS, age, or gender. And in my opinion, that is too easy. Although the end of the cycle ACFT test right before the forge, although it is not a graduation requirement, it is a forge requirement. And one of two things will happen. One, because it is not a graduation requirement, your basic training site may push you through AIT with a failing ACFT score. However, if you do so horrible on the ACFT, for safety reasons, your basic training drill sergeant and their leadership have the ability to recycle you to an earlier phase. And if it's bad enough, restart you to day 0. So no big deal if you fail, but understand you could be prolonging your experience at basic training before moving on to AIT. So it is in your best interest to push yourself, work on your deficiencies, and do better. Your forge is your last FTX or field training exercise where you will be tested on 212 tasks that you've learned to date. So make sure you heed my warning. Push yourself every PT session. If needed, work out or knock out some additional exercises throughout the day or before lights out in the evening on your personal time, because you don't want to fail the ACFT. You do not want to get recycled. Trust me, believe me. During yellow phase, you will also have an introduction to BRM, a basic rifle marksmanship, and learning additional skill sets that you will use later on throughout your training. At the end or conclusion of yellow phase, before you move and phase up to red phase, you will be tested again for COVID. Again, like before, if you test negative, drive on. If you test positive, isolation or quarantine as previously described. Red phase is referred to as the Patriot phase, and it is going to be the most challenging experience of your basic training experience. Yellow phase is more mental than anything, but red phase is going to push your physical limits and your mental limits as well. Here you will begin the soldierization process by learning values, teamwork, and discipline. You will also learn in detail the Army ethics, including, but not limited to, Army values, warrior ethos, basic first aid, SHARP, suicide prevention, resiliency techniques, and customs and courtesies. Your PT sessions will be intensified immensely. You will go on various road marches, or ruck marches as we say in the Army, right? And you will also conduct team building exercises. Pre-COVID, during this time period, you would normally do your hand-to-hand combat training, which is your combatives, okay? But that, because of the close proximity of you and your battle buddy during this time period of the pandemic, it is not authorized due to COVID restrictions. Pugil sticks, or pugil fighting, meaning the padded sticks, all that good stuff, was also axed last year during 2020 amid the coronavirus pandemic. It was recently reinstated into the training curriculum and will be kicking off at some point in 2021 if it's not already. So enjoy. But drill sergeant, I want to learn hand-to-hand combat. A lot of people expressed that it's whack that the Army did away with the Army combatives, but I'm here to tell you right now, as a drill, combatives ain't crap, okay? It is literally a day and a half, maybe 3 days tops to include the pugil training and fighting and all that good stuff, worth of training. It is not a graduation requirement. It is fun. Trust me, it is. I wish it was back, but it's not. But it's not going to define you as a soldier. It is not going to make you a bad A mother flower, okay? It is simply just PT. That's it. Most of it is a lot of PT. But I hope once we get through COVID, we will reinstate it into training as soon as possible. Later throughout your Army career, you can request through your unit to be sent to Level 1 Army Combatives training, which is a week long. You get a nice little certificate that you can hang on your wall and all that good stuff that you wouldn't normally get through basic training with that 1.5 to 3 days worth of combat training. During Red Phase, you will also learn about CBRN, CBRN, which is your chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear warfare. You will also go and execute an exercise in the gas chamber, which was originally discontinued and canceled due to COVID, but around June of 2020, they reinstated it, and you may or may not get the full experience. But at minimum, it is back and you will get the basic experience. What I mean by full experience is at the end of the exercise that you will conduct inside the gas chamber, they would normally make you take off your gas mask and recite the Soldier's Creed or something like that, right? Kind of adding to the experience so that when you leave the gas chamber, you're huffing and puffing and crying and coughing and snot's coming out of your nose, tears coming out of your eyes. It's a fun experience, but again, like I said, they're not supposed to do that, but some locations are. So at minimum, you will get the gas chamber and you may or not get the full experience. Just be glad it's back and that you will experience something. So once you successfully complete the Red Phase, you will transition into White Phase, which is the Rifleman or Gunfighter Phase. It is named that because almost all of your White Phase is all about BRM, Basic Rifle Marksmanship, where for the next 2 weeks, you will spend very long days at the rifle range shooting your rifle. Do not call your weapon a gun. Your rifle is not a gun. It is your assigned weapon. Heed my warning. You will get stronger if you call it a gun. So be smarter. They will focus heavily on the fundamentals of rifle marksmanship. So pay attention to your drill sergeants about the trigger squeeze, breathing, aiming, the body positions, all that good stuff. Make sure you point your rifle downrange at all times because this is the only time that drill sergeants are authorized to put their hands on you if you point that rifle in an unsafe direction. Don't do it, Pry. At the end of those 2 weeks of White Phase, at the end you will receive 40 rounds and you need to shoot up to 40 targets. The minimum requirement to pass BRM qualification is 23 hits or 23 targets. That is the minimum that you will need to pass in order to graduate and move on to AIT. If you score between a 23 to 29, you will get your basic marksmanship badge. If you score 30 to 35, you will get the sharpshooter badge. And if you score 36 to 40, you will receive the expert marksmanship badge. At some point in 2021, I will do a video updating you once they implemented the new BRM qualification course that involves a wall and additional positions, adding more intensity and difficulty and more realistic, in my opinion, which is better for real-world experience. In these 2 weeks during White Phase, you will also experience rappelling off of a 50-foot wall or tower, as we call it, right? And you will also learn about map and compass reading. Now that you've successfully completed the White Phase, you will move on to your last and final phase, Blue Phase, which is referred to as the Warrior Phase. In this phase, you will build upon your tactics training, advanced rifleman marksmanship training, and convoy training. You will also learn about MOUT, M-O-U-T, which is like room clearing procedures similar to what SWAT do in the movies and TV shows. MOUT basically stands for Military Operations in an Urban Terrain. All throughout basic training, to include Blue Phase, you will conduct various ruck marches, increasing the distance and workload, meaning how heavy your load would be on your back and so on and so forth. Your last and final field training exercise, or FTX for short, is your Forge. Prior to the Forge, you will conduct your end of the cycle ACFT, Army Combat Fitness Test, and I strongly suggest you do everything within your power to pass it or risk being recycled for safety reasons. Even though it's not a graduation requirement, if you pose a risk of injury, they will recycle you to an earlier phase, if not restart you to day 0, to improve your physical fitness level. Over the next few days during your Forge, you will be tested on 212 tasks of everything that you learned to date. So now you successfully passed ACFT and your Forge and your end of cycle testing, you will prepare yourself for Family Day and Graduation Day. Pre-COVID, you would actually have an in-person family and graduation day, but During the pandemic, until further notice, due to COVID restrictions, there are no in-person visits with anyone outside of the training environment. So therefore, most places have replaced the family day with a soldier day where they receive their cell phone and they are allowed to go on post for 4 hours and converse with their family members and friends and de-stress and relax. Graduation day is now conducted via live stream on Facebook. I will post links to the official Facebook pages for all 4 main Facebook pages for each basic training site. Your soldier, through a letter, will send you a link to the units, basic training units Facebook official page. The graduation ceremony in of itself that is live streamed is no more than 30 to 45 minutes. It doesn't matter if your family or friend is a soldier and has a CAT card or military ID card and has access or even live on post. Do not meet with anyone outside of the training bubble, okay? If a trainee is caught meeting with somebody outside of the training environment who's not part of the cadre or another trainee, they could possibly face UCMJ punishment, so don't do it. It sucks. I understand. I get it. I empathize with you. When I passed the United States Army Drill Sergeant Academy last summer in July of 2020, I couldn't have my graduation ceremony in person. I had to do it virtually, just like you, via Facebook Live. We empathize with you and we want this to be over as soon as possible because this, we understand, is a very significant moment in your trainee's life. Someday in the future, we will get past this and move on into business as usual, having in-person family and graduation days. They're talking, again, this is not solid. They're hoping with the vaccine and all that good stuff that's going on, and if we continue to trend upwards where the COVID ratings are dropping, possibly late summer to mid-fall, reinstate the in-person family and graduation day. But don't hold me to it. Don't hold them to it. It's what they said during their latest live stream last week. I'll post that link down below for you to peep at as well. So please continue to do our part, your part, on wearing your masks, exercising, social distancing, hand sanitizing, washing your hands, and doing everything that the CDC advises. Because if we continue to do our part, we can get past this and go back to business as usual. So what happens once you graduate from basic training or OSUT, or at least the basic training portion of OSUT? So if you're an OSUT, you are going to recognize that you've met your basic training requirement around the 10-week point. All right, once you get past that, you'll have that recognition and you'll go right back into training and finish out your 11 Bravo or your OSUT portion, your MOS portion of your OSUT training. But if you're going to move on to your AIT, your Advanced Individual Training, in which your MOS or AKA job skill that you signed up for, you will transport, right? If it's not on the same installation that you just graduated from, it's gonna take a few days to 3 weeks to coordinate and schedule sterile transportation to get to your AIT site. If for some reason you're caught in COVID or isolation and your training is delayed and you're not gonna make your original AIT start date, don't worry about it. They'll just reschedule you and put you into a new class. So don't worry about the scheduling of your AIT in your contract or documentation that was provided to you on the day you signed at MEPS. Now, if you were a split training option, meaning you are a student going to basic training in the summertime, or maybe you're a seasonal worker and you're not going to AIT directly afterwards, then you are going to be sent home within 24 to 72 hours. All throughout Army basic training, I suggest that you ship out with your cell phone because during COVID, some basic training sites are implementing phone usage every Sunday for anywhere from a couple minutes to a couple hours. I don't agree with it, but that's the guidance that we are provided. But understand that if you don't hear from your loved one, understand that cell phones are a privilege, not a right. Stay tuned for additional episodes that will break down these phases in grave detail. If you made it this far to the video, do me a favor, drop a hashtag Team SWARTZ down in the comment section down below, letting me know that you my ride or die Team SWARTZ squad member. More importantly, do me a favor, like this video, show me that you appreciate and are liking the tips and insights and information that I'm providing to you in these videos. Smash it if that's something that you're into, and I'll see you in the next video. Hold up, wait a minute, like this video and follow me on social, and while you're at it, go ahead and check out one of my other videos right over here. Just pick one. They're pretty cool. I mean, I liked it. I mean, I was in it. Spoiler alert. I teach you something. Just Just saying.